Nothing captures the health of the top quality of the long boom in China better than the maglev train that zips from Longyan Road in Shanghai to Pudong International Airport in 8 minutes. I had often seen the maglev as a white blur flying by as I drove to the airport, but I had never taken it. There's no practical reason to ride the maglev. Longyan Road is in the middle of nowhere, 20 minutes from the city center, and the walk from the train station at the airport to the terminal is longer than the maglev ride itself. But on a 2009 visit, I finally found the spare time to take the world's fastest operational train. And boy, it was fun.
A big digital screen takes off the speed until it hits a maximum of about 270 miles per hour. But if you don't look out the window, you can't tell you're moving. No rocking, no rattling, indeed no sound at all. Particularly in my car, where my colleague and I were the only riders apart from the conductor, who was dressed like a flight attendant. Locals say the train typically runs half full, attributable to the inconvenience and the relatively steep ticket price of $8, $14 in first class compared to $1.5 for the metro trains. Maglev means magnetic levitation, and promotional videos that describe it as a flying at zero altitude capture the sensation pretty well, because the magnets float the train a fraction of an inch off the ground. It was like a cool amusement park ride, but I have taken it only that one time. It is easy to spoof this cross between public transport and slingshot coast as another Chinese extravagance, alongside the ghost cities of unsold apartment blocks and the vacant sport venues left over from the 2008 Olympics. However, my point here is to highlight how entirely unique it is that China, a nation in the same income class, around $5,000 annual per capita income as Thailand and Peru, was able to build and maintain an experimental technology that none of the richest nations have yet managed to put into commercial operation. Britain ran a maglev in Birmingham from 1984 to 1995, and Germany pondered one for Berlin in the 2000s, but both gave up for cost reasons. With 1.2 billion people in an economy that has been growing at a double-digit pace for more than a decade, China has been generating a national income stream that allowed it to experiment in exciting ways unthinkable even for richer nations. But as the economy has matured, the high-speed fun and games are coming to a close. Plans to extend the Shanghai line have been put off, apparently because of local protest over electromagnetic radiation from the trains and concern about the expensive nature of such projects. China is moving to a new stage, one in which cost and public reaction matter, and the scope of multi-billion-dollar experiment is narrowing. A rethink is already underway in China. It was back in 2008 that Premier Wen Jiabao described Chinese growth as unbalanced, uncoordinated, and unsustainable, and the situation has grown more precarious since. To a degree, most observers have underestimated many critical factors now point to a slowdown in China. Total debt as a share of GDP is rising fast, and the advantage of cheap labor, key to the Chinese boom, is rapidly disappearing, as the labor shortage gives workers the upper hand in contract negotiations. In late 2011, the head of a small construction glass company in Shenteu, a factory town outside Shanghai, complained to a member of my team. 3 years ago, you could shout at your workers. Now they can shout at you. These costs are starting to spill over into high inflation, and Beijing has openly acknowledged that all this points to a slowdown in the economy. Yet such is the overblown faith in China's economic stewards that the China bull seems to think Beijing can achieve growth targets the country itself no longer aims to achieve. The amazing story of China's relentless reform, which had persisted in good times and bad since the landmark reign of paramount leader Deng Xiaoping and its immediate successors appears to have exhausted itself in the last few years. China boomed the old-fashioned way by building roads to connect factories to ports, by building telecommunication networks to connect business to business, and by putting underemployed peasants to work in better jobs at urban factories. Now, all these drivers are reaching a mature stage as the pool of surplus rural labor dries up, factory employment reaches a maximum capacity, and the highway network reaches a total length of 46,000 miles, the second largest in the world behind the 62,000 miles in the United States. The demographic trend that in recent decades tipped the population balance toward young income-earning workers is nearly past, and a growing class of pensioners will soon start to work its decaying effect on growth. The exports that have powered Chinese growth will also slow as the West struggles with its debt. Over the past decade, China's exports have grown at an average yearly pace of 20%, and that is bound to come down. The bull says China can continue to grow by changing its focus from exports market to domestic consumers. But this hope rests on a myth that the Chinese consumer has been suppressed. In fact, Chinese consumption has been growing at the near double-digit rate expected over boom economy. These are natural barriers that cannot be overcome. The current debate on China's future has two basic camps: the extremely bullish camp and the bearish camp. The extremely bullish camp likes to extrapolate past trends endlessly into the future, forecasting continued growth of 8% or better. The economists who are most bullish on China predict the economy will grow by 15% in dollar terms every year, or 8% growth in GDP plus 5% appreciation on the yuan and 3 to 4% inflation, which will be enough for China to eclipse the United States in a decade. The bulls leave no room for recession or reversal, and they forecast a kind of endless boom in the urban real estate market, assuming that tens of millions of rural Chinese will migrate to the cities over the next 2 decades, as they have done in the last 2. The bearish camp was a shrill minority until recently, but is growing. One common line of the bearish argument is that the China's overinvestment, surging debts, and rising home prices are very similar to what occurred in Thailand and Malaysia before the 1997-1998 Asian crisis, which brought those economies to a grinding halt. I think the truth probably lies in the middle.